And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
And welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. Thousands of students across the country are planning to walk out of classes today as part of the National Day of Action to defend public education. According to the website studentactivism.net, more than 100 actions are planned in 32 states. The call for nationwide protests originated in California following last November's student strikes and building takeovers. In November, the University of California's Board of Regents voted to raise undergraduate fees 32% next fall. Due to budget cuts in California, teachers have been put on furlough, classes have been cut, and entire academic departments have been eliminated. A number of student protests have already taken place this week in California. On Wednesday, 20 students occupied a building at Cal State University Fullerton for 5 hours. On Monday, 5 students were arrested in Sacramento, outside the office of California Assemblymember Jim Nielsen. University of California Student Association President Victor Sanchez spoke in Sacramento on Monday.
I think the purpose of today's march, rally, lobby day, action, everything, is to make sure that we make a case to the state that education should be a right and not a privilege. We've seen our institutions teeter along the line of privatization, and we can't take it anymore. And I think ultimately we're here to stand up and have our voices heard, and that's what we're here to do.
Student protests have also been held in recent days across the University of California system to protest a series of recent racist incidents at UC San Diego and UCLA. At UC Berkeley, scores of black students lined up to block the campus's famous Sather Gate. Here in New York, walkouts are planned at Hunter College and other schools. A rally is scheduled outside of Governor David Paterson's Manhattan office. Some international student protests are also being organized today. Earlier today at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa, police fired water cannons on students who were demanding the government provide free education for the poor. The South African Students' Congress called on students to boycott classes at 9 campuses today. Well, we're joined now by 2 guests at the University of California, Berkeley. Ananya Roy is a professor of urban studies and international development. She's part of the Solidarity Alliance. And Ricardo Gomez is a third-year undergraduate student who started the group Berkeley Students Against the Cuts. Professor Ananya Roy, you have written an open letter to the university community. Can you talk about what is at stake?
Well, today, March 4th, is a historic day. It is a historic day because here in California, all sectors of public education, K through 12, community colleges, state universities, the University of California system, are coming together to stand up against the defunding of public education, to say that we have had enough. But today is also a historic day because it is a day of hope. The last time I was on the show was in November when we were planning a 3-day strike, and that strike was about the pain being inflicted on the UC system, about fee hikes and worker layoffs and faculty furloughs. Well, those issues have not gone away, but today is not a day of fear. It is a day of hope, and that hope is expressed in how this day has become a national, even an international day to take action to defend public education, from elementary schools to community colleges to students in colleges around the world.
And Ricardo Gomez, your organization has talked about this being a battle against privatization of education. What do you mean?
I think that the battle that we're facing right now, I think the thing that's really galvanizing students isn't just the massive fee increases that students are seeing this semester and are going to see next year. What's really galvanizing students is the idea that their public university and their public universities are being privatized. The different services that we have on our campuses, IT services, bus services, dining services, are facing union busting by administrators, and there are just different things. More corporations are coming onto campus to do research in ways that don't really align with the values of public institutions. And so I think a lot of students are realizing that their public institutions are becoming privatized, and that's not a trajectory that they want to see for their public institutions. And so As much as this is a battle about fee increases, or this is a battle about K through 12, it's a battle about fighting against privatization and reaffirming and reasserting the public good.
I want to turn to California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. At his State of the State address in January, he called for privatizing some of the state's prisons and funneling the savings into education.
We no longer can afford to cut higher education either. The priorities have become out of whack over the years. I mean, think about it. 30 years ago, 10% of the general fund went to higher education, and only 3% went to prisons. Today, almost 11% goes to prisons, and only 7.5% goes to higher education. Spending 45% more on prisons than universities is no way to proceed into the future.
That's Governor Schwarzenegger. He also says he understands why students are protesting today. Ananya Roy, what about the role of the governor? Just the idea that there's not enough money right now.
Well, our theme for today, particularly the rally in Sacramento, is educate the state. And I'm glad to see that the governor has become aware of how California is spending much more on prisons than on its universities. But the governor's proposal was faulty for two reasons. One, it presented the problem as the lack of resources. And the second, it presented a trade-off between privatizing prisons and cuts in the public university system. Well, California is one of the wealthiest economies in the world. The issue here is not that of resources. The issue here is of priorities. But second, I think our march today and the various rallies in California are a way of saying not in our name, that we reject these various trade-offs, that the privatization of prisons in order to stop cuts to our system is not a progressive social agenda. We need to unite across social sectors to say that we have to find a way to invest in the collective future of California. And that means thinking about investing rather than simply thinking about shuffling resources from one set of cuts to another.
And Ananya Roy, in terms of the impact of these tuition increases, I think it's about 171% now in the past few years in the University of California system. What has been the impact in terms of the student body, the students that you are now teaching versus those a few years ago in terms of the class and racial opportunities for higher education?
Well, the impact is quite immediate. We are seeing students struggling to get into classes, to keep up with those classes. We're seeing students holding down multiple jobs while they're trying to get through school. We're seeing students trying to finish their college education in a shorter amount of time, and yet their inability to get into all of the classes they need makes that more difficult. So we're really looking at a generation that is facing great frustration, that may graduate from college with a crushing burden of debt, and that faces a general condition of hopelessness. I think there's some very important questions here also about whether the University of California system will be able to maintain these twin mandates of access and excellence. We are clearly seeing an erosion of access. Now, these are not new issues. Students of color have been fighting around these issues for quite a while in the UC system and more broadly in California, that the doors of the public university have never been open for all. So we see this as a struggle to not only save the university, but to also transform it, to make those issues of access and opportunity central to the struggle, visible to all.
Ricardo Gomez, can you describe the protests that will be happening at UC Berkeley and how you're organizing with others?
Mm-hmm. So today there's going to be two main actions that UC Berkeley students will be participating in. On campus, there's going to be a march to Oakland, to downtown Oakland, to Frank Ogawa Plaza. And so the idea is that that we will walk from UC Berkeley to downtown Oakland, and that different students from K through 12 system and teachers who have decided to go on strike for the day will join us, and we will join them, and then there will be a rally in downtown Oakland. And also, Save the University is organizing buses to Sacramento for a rally there. And across the bay in San Francisco, there's going to be a rally at Civic Center at 5 p.m. And so I think really the message here is that that public education is a right, and that we will fight for it in different locales.